Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we are on location in Tucson, Arizona, and we're very pleased to be seated with the author of this book, Home, Heaven on Mother Earth, Patti Cota Robles. Patti is the founder of a nonprofit organization called the New Age Study for Humanity's Purpose, and she has been on the path of speaking truth as she sees it about life, our purpose collectively as a humanity on this planet for many, many years. So we're very glad to have Patti with us today to speak with us, our audience, about what she sees as going on, where we're positioned historically, and what it is that's happening next. Hello, Patti.
Hello, Mitchell. It's wonderful to be here.
So glad to have you.
Thank you.
So, first of all, what is it that initially inspired you in your life? You've been married for many years, you're a mother, a grandmother, and you have also been inspired to have been, at one point, a marriage and family counselor. So you've been in service
Yes.
for many, many years to family and to the world. What is it that had you kind of turn a certain corner and begin this process in this way?
Well, I think this is a very unique time on the planet, and I personally think that every single person here has been preparing for a very long time to do what we've come to do.
We're very old.
in this lifetime, right? And I think each of us had a particular catalyst, and I tease about that and said, I think I've done something very rare that nobody else did. I volunteered to be born into a dysfunctional family, and which I think that so many of us have done. That was a catalyst. And I was in a situation that was difficult as I was growing up. And through that whole process, I kept having this inner knowing that for one thing, I was going to survive the situation. And for another thing, that was not the way life was supposed to be on this planet. So that set me on a personal quest that through high school took me through the gamut of world religions. And I studied as much as I could get my hands on. And then through the university, studying the sciences of psychology and things associated with mind and the laws of physics and things that were associated in the universe, and became aware that there's this unifying thread of truth that's running through everything, which in some way or another, through all the world religions and through all levels of science, is indicating this universal law of the circle, that what we are sending out is coming back to us. And Eastern philosophy, yes,
It's coming back, all right.
Yes, it is. Eastern philosophy, it was called karma, or the law of cause and effect. In Judaism, it was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Christianity, it's reaping what we sow or casting our bread upon the water. In metaphysics, it's called the in-breath and out-breath of God. Mm-hmm. And in science, it's like attracts like, action and reaction. So becoming aware of that understanding set me on my personal quest that if in fact everything we're sending out through our thoughts, words, actions, and feelings is returning to us, and every
Watch out.
yes, and every form of education, spiritual and secular, in the universe is teaching us that, why aren't we getting it? What is the problem? So that set me really on my personal quest that led me through a lot of personal experiences, reaching in and up into the realms of illumined truth, connecting with the higher realms of understanding, and then feeling that if people were just aware of how much help we're getting and the urgency of the hour and the significance of this moment, that we would turn our lives around. And so I've committed my life to bringing that information to anyone who's interested.
Some people, that's beautiful. Thank you very much, Patti. Some people feel that things lay out in the world exactly as they must, and that we don't even have that much of a say in that. In other words, let's just imagine that all human beings were more in touch with both their masculine and their feminine, and that it was balanced for all of these centuries, in fact millennia, at least since Lemuria, and that we didn't veer to one side as we did, the masculine, so heavily, that caused a lot of the aggression and the violence and the warfare then, and the competitive business and economic models that we have that are so disruptive to life and to our beautiful Mother Earth. Do you believe that had there been more of a consciousness of the ideal of balance between yin and yang, that we could have possibly averted all the path that we've gone down?
Absolutely. I do not believe that the fall, as we express it when we began using our thoughts and feelings to create patterns that conflicted with the patterns of perfection in the causal body of God, was part of the original plan. The original plan was
we made a mistake, in other words.
Yes, we made a choice to use our gift of life in ways that it was not originally intended. The duality of God is not the good and evil. You know, we've fallen into this place where we've gotten this concept that the balance of hatred is love and the balance of disease is health, and that is a misunderstanding that is a problem with what's happening now, because as long as we believe we can't experience peace without the opposite polarity of war, we'll keep perpetuating war. Yes, what the duality of God is, which is certainly that balance, is the masculine polarity of divine will and power and the feminine polarity of divine love. And the masculine polarity is the out-breath, the radiant power and the out-breath, and the feminine is the divine cohesive power of the in-breath. And the original divine plan, according to the information in the realms of illumined truth, and that's been given, yes, wonderful, yes, being given to all of us now, is that the original plan, the reason our Father, Mother, God decided to create expressions, individualized expressions of God, the sons and daughters of God, is to expand the borders of divinity, that every cell in the whole of creation is a cell in the body of God. And if God created individualized expressions and granted us with free will and the creative faculties of thought and feeling, the intent is that we would observe all the perfection in the causal body of God, and then through our unique experience, we would combine those patterns of love and ecstasy and wonder and awe in new, previously unknown expressions of divinity. So the original plan was that the way we would experience this, and through the law of the circle most quickly, would be within the constraints of a time and space continuum. And our free will was to be, how today shall I use my gift of life to create greater expressions of love and harmony and music and all of those wonderful things. And so that we wouldn't experience what we are doing now, there was one commandment given, and that was, do not partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the reason that even had to be expressed is because in other time frames and other systems of world, the children of God had chosen to use their gift of life to experiment with things that resulted in poverty and disease and war and hatred and suffering,
old age.
Right. And our Father, Mother, God knew that if we didn't even have that in our consciousness, we wouldn't experience it. But there was a time when we made that choice.
And that would be
okay. Yes, we would end up experiencing, going through the process, and that's what we're doing now. We made the choice to create patterns that conflicted with the original plan. We fell into discord and chaos as a result of that, and now we're in the process of reversing that. So it's true that every single thing that we're going through is our own energy from some time frame or dimension returning to us. There is not a person, place, condition, or thing that can interject anything into our life that we at some time frame have not created, co-created. And when you say that we're...
It's a beautiful way to look at everything, really.
But the important thing I think to understand, I agree with you, that it helps in understanding so much more rather than getting into this victim consciousness of feeling helpless and feeling that we're these worthless sinners, worms in the dust, and that we're just being punished, which is not part of God's plan.
Original sin.
Yes, right.
But there was a sin. The sin, meaning, of course, in the original Greek, of to be off-center, as in, missing the target, as we know it means, is that we missed the real call to avoid that, in this case, to use this myth, tree. To avoid the tree.
Right.
And instead, we partook of the tree, which I understand you're mentioning good and evil as such, is our sinking into the world of duality.
Right.
And,
when we began creating things that reflected in the environment as that began, symbolically, Adam and Eve, of course, is an allegory, and symbolically being banished from the garden after they partook of the tree of knowledge is because the elemental kingdom, the earth, the air, the water, and fire, is intelligent, and it is responsible for outpicturing the thought forms of the sons and daughters of God. That's how we were supposed to learn what we were creating and experience the joy of our creations. So when we began sending forth fragmented, discordant patterns that resonated with anger or frustration or hatred or the myriad other things, and that was a process, of course, we didn't do that immediately, but it began reflecting on the elemental kingdom, thus causing famine and plagues and pestilence. Mm-hmm. So, when you talk about this moment and that we're all going through exactly the experience that we've agreed to go through, that is absolutely correct. But what the spiritual hierarchy and all the legions of light are trying to get us to understand is that there is an easy way to do this and there's a hard way to do this. And we have the ability to transmute every thought, word, action, or feeling we've ever misqualified through the path of divine love. And if we don't do that, we will experience the energy coming back in difficult ways. We will experience the purging and cleansing that we're experiencing right this moment with the elemental kingdom, with floods and famines and hurricanes and things, because that's a way of purging and cleansing. We can go through difficult life experiences. We can experience poverty consciousness and go through lack and limitation because we've developed poverty consciousness in our lives. But we also have the moment to love that energy free and start energizing prosperity consciousness instead. So, in a moment. Yes. Now,
in fact, that's all we've got to make any kind of change within anyway.
Right.
So
the important thing too about that is, because people they put forth their energy, they put forth their efforts, their affirmations, and sometimes they don't experience the results. And so when you talk about in a moment, we are working with the universal physical laws here. Sure. And there is a critical mass. And what critical mass is 51%. And when 51% of our energy, vibration, and consciousness from all time frames and dimensions is vibrating with prosperity consciousness, prosperity has to manifest. So what we have to do, and we never know the mass of negativity. This is the wonder of this age, is that we are receiving more assistance from on high than ever before in the whole of creation. And there is a gift that is known as the violet flame. And what the violet flame is, it's the force field, the predominant force field of Aquarius that we have now moved into the embrace of. It's one of the solar aspects of deity. But it is also the perfect balance of the sapphire blue radiance of divine will and power of our Father God, and the crystalline pink radiance of divine love and reverence for life of our Mother God. And the sapphire blue ray of our Father God activates our left brain, rational, logical mind, and radiates through the power center of our throat. The pink ray of our Mother God activates the right brain, the creative, intuitive mind, and the love center of our heart. And when those are perfectly balanced, our right and left brains are brought into balance. We activate the spiritual brain centers, the pituitary, pineal, and hypothalamus glands, ganglionic centers at the base of our brain, results in the birthing of the consciousness of light, which is Christ consciousness or divine consciousness of the Son or daughter of God. And what this violet flame does, the perfect balance of our Father, Mother, God, we can literally say, I ask that the violet flame from the heart of God pass through me and transmute every electron that I've ever released in any time frame or dimension, known or unknown, that's charged with poverty consciousness. And as it passes through us, it's stamped with our individual electronic pattern. It goes out into the universe and magnetizes to it other energy that's vibrating with our electronic pattern, that's vibrating with poverty consciousness. So the reason that it was said that this transformation will take place in the twinkling of an eye, is because with this gift, which is infinitely more powerful than our fear-based, fragmented thoughts of poverty or hatred or war or low self-esteem or disease or any of the things that we're manifesting, we can transmute
any of the things, the thought forms that are dominating our entire planet.
Right, absolutely. That we can transmute hundreds of lifetimes worth of that negativity in the twinkling of an eye. So when we say 51%, even for collectively for humanity, when 51% of the energy, vibration, and consciousness of humanity is focused on peace, we'll have peace on this planet. Now this doesn't mean, which is important, 51% of the people. It means 51% of the energy, vibration, and consciousness.
Oh,
and one
that's
person,
an interesting distinction.
It's a very important distinction because one person anchoring light can transcend hundreds of thousands of fragmented thought forms of war. So it's not going to take 51% of the population, but we are moving toward this critical mass at a very rapid rate.
So in other words, if we were to quantify all of the energy fields on the planet, and what we need is 51% of those fields, essentially, to precipitate the shift.
Well, and 51%, and that's impossible to measure because light workers that are awakening can magnetize from the heart of God incredible amounts of divine light beyond, we can invoke the light of 1,000 suns to blaze through us, so our ability is limitless in what we can transmute. And that's the process that we're in now.
How do you see it going?
I think that we are succeeding beyond the expectations of heaven. And I know that doesn't appear that in looking at the outer world. But the reason is because as the light of God enters, it enters the core of purity. All life is interrelated. All life is one. It enters the core of purity in every electron. And what that means is no matter how distorted an energy source is, for instance, poverty, no matter how negative that manifestation of poverty is, the core of purity is still encoded with the original divine potential of God's limitless abundance. So what is happening is the light of God is entering every core of purity and pushing everything to the surface that conflicts with that.
Indeed.
So for instance, in war and hatred,
everything unlike itself.
Right. And so for instance, in hatred, it activates the divine core of divine love and pushes the hatred to the surface. So what it looks like in the outer world, this is the reason biblically this is referred to as the time of screaming and the gnashing of teeth, is because we easily see the garbage being pushed to the surface to be cleared. What we don't see is the incredible light that's pushing it to the surface. And with the gift of the violet flame, and people all over the planet transmuting this as it's coming up, we're making progress beyond the expectations of heaven.
That's beautiful. That's very, very... I just want to raise this because of the question that I first asked.
Sure.
Did we have to go down this path? And we both agreed that, in a sense, we did not, except that we did. And now we're here.
Yes, right.
And now it is being transmuted. Thank you, God, and all beings that are doing it. You say we're surpassing the expectations of heaven, but did we also disappoint the expectations of heaven that we went the way we did and for so long with so little learning from our mistakes?
Well, God, of course, transcends any frequency less than limitless perfection. So God doesn't...
I didn't ask it from the point of view of forgiveness or punishment, not at all, but just there are hierarchies, celestial hierarchies, and from that point of view, looking into this time-space plane, would they have said, oh my God, look at who they elected?
Would they have rather we didn't choose this path of suffering and misery? Of course they would. Of course they would.
There they go again,
But they are assisting in this way. And even when we say the help, we are receiving more help than ever before, but they can't do it for us.
But we're receiving the help as a direct proportion to the help we're not giving ourselves, perhaps.
Well, we are, but when I say we're succeeding beyond the expectations of heaven, heaven never believed that we were going to be able to move to the situation where every fallen soul was going to make it into the light. And we have crossed that threshold now. And every evolving soul...
So based on the choices that we've been making for the past several thousand years, the the prognosis wasn't that good.
It was not good. That's why even in the Bible it talks about the two women in the field and one will be left behind, during the rapture, which is the ascension, which is moving into the next spiral of evolution.
And so now you're saying, Patti, that we have come to a point based on collective light workers doing prayer, love from the heart, etc., to a point, to a different octave, such that everyone will be making it into the light.
Absolutely. And within the last few years,
when
we
was
have
that kind of, do you think,
the major shift.
noted?
Okay, the major shift began with harmonic convergence, and
In 1987.
in 1987, and has been, we've been moving quantum leaps and bounds since then.
We were praying as a group down at Machu Picchu.
Yes. And there are literally the light workers, the numbers are legion on this planet, and every light worker on the planet is having a unique facet of this divine plan. I believe every single person ultimately is going to be a light worker. I don't think this is a unique process or anybody's doing anything more significant than anyone else.
Manifestation of human life.
Yes.
In fact, it's if you have cells that are actually inherently light, one must ultimately come to their expression.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a question of when.
And within the last few years, the two earths became one, and all life is moving forward now. And on my website, there are lots of articles and things that I have written that have documented these activities of light. There's books and tapes and things like that. If people are interested in the specifics, they can certainly have access to them.
Patti, you referred to the Bible as a source of information, referring to the rapture, and this is something that we have heard and we know of through these scriptures, these texts. And how do those words, how do those notions relate to your understanding of what's happening?
Well, of course, the Bible was written in the language of the people so that they could understand it in the day that it was written, but it was very significantly talking about this time. And as I mentioned earlier, we've moved into the force field of Aquarius, which is the seventh solar aspect of deity. And even in Revelations, in the information that was being given, it was clear that we weren't going to fully understand in those days exactly what was happening. But it said in the day of the seventh angel, when he begins to sound, the mystery of God will be fulfilled and time will be no more, which means this particular time.
So that interestingly coincides with the Mayan calendar as well.
Yes.
Where time, Terence McKenna and Carl Kalman, who's now a Mayan scholar, has said that time as we know it no longer exists after 2012.
We're moving up.
There's a nice coinciding there.
Yes, we're moving actually into the fifth dimension. We've moved quickly through the fourth and into the fifth dimension, and there's only time and space only exists in the fourth and third dimensions. So we're moving into that timeless, spaceless moment. And the reason that the philosophers and seers of old thought it was the end of the world and talked about the end times is because of this critical mass that we're talking about, that they were observing their visions through their third dimensional sight. And when, for instance, in quantum physics, when an electron is accelerating, the moment it reaches 51% of the higher vibration, it disappears here and reappears here.
In a different orbit.
Yes, and that's what's happening. And they saw the Earth disappear, but they didn't see where it was going.
And they couldn't see into the invisible.
Right. And the rapture is the ascension process, that we are moving into the higher realms of perfection. The latter days, the screaming and gnashing of the teeth, is the cleansing that we're going through, because all life is interrelated. We're all one. It isn't us and them. It isn't negativity and positive. It's all part of us. So we have to heal and transform and transmute every misqualified thought, word, action, or feeling, and literally love it free so that it can move into the light with us. And that's what we're in the process of doing now, at a greatly accelerated pace, with assistance beyond anything we've ever experienced before.
So it was understood or seen that human beings were going to march down the path that it would back in the times of Ezekiel and other earlier prophecies.
You mean returning back into the light? Or
no, going down the path of hell, basically. Yes. That's what.
By the time Ezekiel was there, by the time those teachings had happened, we had already fallen.
It had already been.
Yes, and so they were referring and talking about long after the fall. The fall took place millions of years ago. I know that there's a lot of confusion about time frames, but the fall took place long before anyone in the Bible ever wrote anything about.
What do you foresee life being after 2012?
Well, I think it's a process. See, and I think personally that 2012...
Are we going to be floating in timeless, shapeless space?
I think just like since harmonic
harmonic
convergence, we've been going through incredible shifts. And because of the corrections in the Mayan calendar, your friend Phil Gruber and mine have talked a lot about harmonic concordance that took place in beginning the shift of the ages. That was actually the shift that was prophesied in the Mayan calendar. Because of the adjustments that were made, it was a little bit earlier. This was a blending of cycles within cycles within cycles of galactic and celestial realms. There's a time in every so many billion years that all of the cycles come into one universal heartbeat with the breath of God, and there's a cosmic in-breath that breathes us all up the spiral of evolution.
It's unbelievable. I know we live both in a time full and timeless realm, but the time full realm just ran out. I really appreciate your gift.
Thank you. It was wonderful being able to share with you.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. This is Mitchell J. Raven from Tucson, Arizona, sitting with Patti Cota Robles. We thank her so much for her great gift to all of us. And thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you all next week.